Hey, coaches. Today we're looking at daily thought journals or daily thought records. These are useful tools to carry the concepts from general cognitive behavioral work around thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, as well as the work of the ABC or the ABCD exercises, and bring them into an exercise that the client can do on their own outside of the coaching space to create some in between the coaching session awareness. This is especially effective to capture ideas, capture emotions, capture patterns that are happening in the moment. And it really does support clients' developmental work towards becoming the kind of person they want to be, to acknowledge these moments where they're having the most struggle, and to look for those particularly challenging times when they are most triggered or when they are most cycling in a way that they do not want to see. So let's do a quick dive into these various daily thought records. And I just want to quickly say, as we look at these, you'll notice that they're really the same picture or the same chart over and over again. And yet, that's one of the things that we see a lot with any coaching tool in general, but also like the ABC or the ABCD from last week. There are many iterations, many versions of these tools. You'll see if you look up Daily Thought Record, for instance, you'll see a lot of options, a lot of different flavors of these. I want you to consider building your own in the end, really. As you explore thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, as you explore various things around cognitive behavioral work with your clients, consider any exercise, any flow that might fit for each individual client that you have, and you can build your own version of these in a way that really fits. So the four that we're looking at here today are just four good options. I've used these kinds of charts or these kinds of tables, daily thought records, with a variety of clients. They're very helpful when the client is interested in doing the exercise. You'll see five column ones, or 5 row ones, I should say, and you also see 7 row ones. The idea here is if you want to keep it to every day or every day of the week, which would be 7 rows, or if you want to keep it to every weekday, which would be 5 rows, you can give them a daily thought record for that purpose. Otherwise, you can just give them the 5-day one or the 5-row one, just to say, as you have emotional cycles, as you have these moments that you want to record, take 5 minutes and do this exercise. So sometimes the daily thought record is something that they do very frequently, as they're really capturing every time they have that conversation, every time that they have a meeting, every time, maybe 4 times in a day, where they're doing the thing. And so sometimes you give it to them for a 1-a-day exercise, or you give them a daily thought record to capture their thinking, capture their patterns each and every time that it comes up. This is where your ability to co-create the tool and the experience comes into play. Make sure to do that with this kind of resource. And now let's dive into some daily thought records. This first set is going to be just a simple building of awareness. We're going to looking at what is the situation, and the goal here, and you'll want to walk with them through each of these, each one that you would offer. The goal is to have the situation as bland as possible. Just the event from the most objective perspective possible. And then what thoughts did the person have in that moment? What emotions do they have in that moment? And oftentimes a daily thought record will have a space where they can rank or rate, scale their emotional state. How strong was that emotion of anger? How strong was that emotion of frustration? Or how strong was that emotion of nervousness? Whatever it might be. The body's response, this is the physiological. If they're in front of a big crowd giving a speech, what was their body doing in that moment? Then their direct behavior, what they actually did or said with the physical response. And we talked about this last week. Sometimes cognitive behavioral work looks at thoughts to emotions to behaviors, and sometimes it looks at thoughts to emotions to physiological responses and behaviors. However you want to do it. Totally up to you and your client. But here we have those two broken down or broken apart. So body's responses, then the actual behavior, and then just generally, hey, what do you learn as you took a step back and reflected on the entire situation? Again, you have this in 5-day or 7-day versions. And then we get into measuring emotions. This is similar to the last one: situation, thoughts, rating or scoring their emotional state, or a couple of different emotions they have, 3 different emotions in that situation, and how strong each of those emotions were. And then the behavior, this is where we're combining the physiological and the behavior into one. An alternative thought. What's another way of looking at this situation? Now that you've taken a step back, what might be another perspective? What might be an outsider's perspective on what happened? And so on. So this is just the idea of perspective shift is very common in our questions as coaches. And then you do a second state of an emotional check-in. So this is something you can run in a session, debriefing an experience with them, and then hand them the daily thought record for them to do some of this work at the end of the day, where they look at the peak experience, where they were most triggered, it's actually the valley experience oftentimes, where they're most triggered or most frustrated, and consider that alternative perspective they might be able to bring in. So we have a couple of options there, and then we have facts versus interpretations. We look at the triggering event or the situation. What are the raw facts about what happened, what was said? Not what was intended, what the person really meant, even separating the emotional state. We're just looking at the facts and then the interpretations. What did I say to myself? What was my judgment call on the way they behaved, and so on? And therefore, how did I behave in response? What might be an alternative perspective and a space for learning? Again, a great one that you can use in a live session. And through that experience, hand them the daily thought record for them to carry over to their week and to learn from each day, doing a recap. Maybe they would do that with every instance of a meeting, a conversation, interaction with an individual person. But I would see this as a little bit more as an end-of-day daily thought record. And then finally, we have more of the balanced perspective. How do we create a balanced perspective? And this is oftentimes, if you look up daily thought records, I think this is the better version if the client is willing to do the work. And that's the big question. Sometimes it's just nice to do the general, what are you learning, the first one. Here, we are looking at the triggering event, the emotions as we have, the automatic thoughts that happen in that moment, supporting facts that support the automatic thinking, contradictory facts that go against or offer additional information that sound a bit contradictory to the automatic thinking, and therefore an alternative balanced perspective. So this meeting happened. I felt really nervous. In the moment, I said to myself, you are no good, and your manager and everyone in this room knows that you're no good for this position. Supporting facts, people, as I'm talking, aren't making eye contact, they're doodling, so a few different things might be in there. Then contradictory facts might be some feedback they've received from previous meetings, some feedback they received from this specific meeting, and this one little section in the session that seemed to get people's attention. So that's the contradictory facts, additional perspective. And then we look at, okay, so what's the holistic way of seeing this event of running the meeting? Another great one to do within a session. And then we hand it to them for exploring those most challenging experiences throughout a day, or doing a one a day. What was the meeting that you most want to unpack, the conversation you most want to unpack, the situation you most want to unpack, so on. So these are daily thought records. They come in a lot of different flavors. I do encourage you to consider what you would like to create for yourself and for your clients. There's no one right formula. And you'll see that with the variety of daily thought records and journals that are out there to choose from. You can build your own, as long as the way you build it serves the deep exploration and the reframing for the client's sake. We don't want to solve their problems with these daily thought records and daily thought exercises, so to speak. We want to create awareness and shifts of perspectives so they can learn and choose alternative directions, choose alternative approaches, or just have that boost of confidence or clarity about what they really want to happen. Then you can couple that awareness, much like what we saw with the ABCD exercises, with alternative, or not alternative, you can couple their progress with some of the resources and tools and frameworks we've brought in throughout the entire corporate coach training. I hope this is helpful. Please practice this, test it out in session, hand it to them, see what happens. There's a lot of great work that a client can do for themselves after a coaching session. Thank you for coaching them, and thank you for helping them begin to coach themselves.